Did the Bible rip off the Book of the Dead? Yeah, what's going on, party people, the place to be? I go by the name of the BK Apologist, transmitting all the way live. New York is the city. Brooklyn is the borough. What's good? What's popping? Hope everybody's doing well for the new year. I mean, January has already been off to a nice and sketchy start, to say the least. But we're here. We're alive. We're still breathing. So amen to that. I'm glad everybody could be here. Let me talk to people to chat. We got my man, Mr. Phil Fox. We got JP Davis. We got Curly Shanae. We got the indelible, the incomparable Nate 2D2. We got Adrian Jones, King Charles. We got my man, Yashai Yehuda. Shalom Aleichem to you, sir. Yeah. So please make sure you guys tell a friend that it's me again. Please share the link. And of course, I am honored once again to have one of my favorites, if not the favorite Egyptologist in the whole wide world. Of course, I'm talking about Dr. David Folk. Now, for the uninitiated, for those who don't know David holds 3 master's degrees. He holds an MDiv degree and an MA in Near Eastern and Biblical Archaeology and Languages from Trinity International University, and a 3rd master's degree in Near and Middle Eastern Civilizations from the University of Toronto. His BA in philosophy is from the University of British Columbia. His research has been focused on 4 primary interrelated areas: the history and rituals of ancient Egypt, the Old Testament and Exodus, chronology, and digital humanities and origins. He has also published in archaeometallurgy, lexicography, ancient warfare, and new religious movements. So he is more than qualified to talk about today's topic. But before we do, hello, how are you doing, David?
Fantastic. How are you?
Doing all right. I'm doing all right. I mean, not as good as you. I mean, you recently came back from Egypt, correct?
I did. I survived Egypt.
You survived. Yes, Indiana Jones, once again. So tell us about the tour that you was on. A little bit.
Well, it was a 10-day tour. It went from Cairo to all the way down to Luxor, and then sort of made its way back through Abydos and Minya, and then ended back in Cairo. So we got to see sort of the big sites of Egypt. And it was a tour that was oriented around it was oriented for pastors and other biblical scholars to come to Egypt and to learn about the connections between Egypt and the Bible.
That's good. That's good. So was there anything that you noticed or any extra insight you got this time around from the previous times you've been there?
Well, you always get new insights every time you go. This is one of the amazing things about traveling to Egypt, is you always see new things. Even the host who led the tour, Dr. James Hoffmeyer, he was there taking a few pictures here and there of new insights he saw there. And he's been there dozens and dozens and dozens of times. He grew up there. So every time you go, you see something new. There's always something new. There's always some new insight. So that's one thing that's really exciting about Egyptology, is there's always something more.
I was talking to David. I was reminding him that I forgot he was in Egypt, and there was a question I wanted to ask him. So I Facebook inboxed him, and he's like, "Yeah, I can't respond right now. I'm going past the Nile." I'm like, best excuse ever. It's like I'm sorry, I'm in the cradle of civilization right now. I can't really reach you at this time. I'm like, excuse me, sir. So but that was
I did respond. I mean,
you did respond. You did respond. But it was just funny how I was crossing the Nile. My bad. I'm like, hey, okay, yeah, it was definitely a flex. Yes, that was great. That was great. Woo, that's an amazing excuse. It's like, what do I say about that? You know.
Yeah, even sent you photos. What more do you
yeah,
want?
yeah, you did. Speaking of that, were you able to?
I
Can you
do
share a
have.
couple or?
Yeah, I can share a couple.
That'd be great.
If I can get it working.
Okay.
That's the caveat. So let's see. Share screen. Okay. Share screen. Select window or screen. Okay. Allow. If it does.
Yeah, it should pop up by me if you did it correctly.
Okay. Allow.
There we go. There we go. Wow. Can you make that a little bigger?
Can you see? Does that working?
Yeah. No, I'm just saying. Can you make it a little bigger for the people?
Well, I'm trying here. Wait.
All right. I mean, the guys in the chat, can you guys see that? Put a 1 in the chat if you guys can see it.
Wait a minute. I'm not sure. I think it is.
There you go. Nice. Okay, right. Okay, that's good.
Okay, if that's good, then we're probably okay.
Yeah, they can see it. All right. Yeah. So break this down for us. What? I mean, I know it's pyramids, but which ones?
Those are the pyramids of Giza. That's from the vantage point. There's a vantage point where you can see 6 pyramids, and you can see Khufu's pyramid, which is way over there. You can see Khafre's pyramid, even though it's a smaller pyramid, it's on a higher vantage point. Menkare's pyramid, and then the 3 queen pyramids of Menkaure. Okay, and we got the Mei Doom Pyramid. This is a really interesting pyramid because it's polished on the interior. It's almost like they tried a different kind of project to begin with, and then sort of decide to expand it.
Is this pre-dynastic?
Oh no! This pyramid here was built just before Khufu's at Giza, so this was built by Seneferu. Okay. So there's a huge, long tradition of pyramids before the building of pyramids at Giza. This is the cave church in Cairo. This is a Christian community that sort of began out of a sort of a slum in Cairo called the Garbage City.
Wow.
Garbage collectors were sort of pushed out of Cairo by Nasser, and it became an area of crime. And what happened was a priest, a Coptic Orthodox priest, moved into the city and started this church at a quarry. And as the church grew, they started dug deeper and deeper and deeper into the hillside until they made this massive church from a cave.
How old is this church?
This church is about 30 years old.
Okay.
And when you go to the community here, you just see a radical difference from, say, the rest of Cairo. You see a vibrant Christian community whose faith is alive and active. It's really inspiring.
Wow.
You would not recognize it as, say, from the rest of Egyptian Cairo. It's a culturally different world. This is the horned altar at Karnak. This is the oldest extant horned altar. So it predates anything in Palestine or Canaan. It dates to Tutmosis III. So this was built before even the Exodus took place. So
wow. Now, is this ritual can you go back again real quick?
Yeah, sure.
So this ritual technology here, is this similar to what we would have found in the temple in Israel, the altar, or would it be?
This is similar to what we would have maybe found at, say, the temple at Hebron. Because this has a few things that would have made it not kosher.
Undressed stones?
Well, you're supposed to use undressed stones for an altar. You're not supposed to have a staircase. This has both. This is both dressed stones. And actually, if you see this little sort of abutment there, that's actually houses a staircase that goes right up to the top.
Yeah, you're definitely not supposed to have that. Okay.
Yeah, you're definitely not supposed to have that.
Okay.
And it was for burning incense.
Nice.
We have here the pylon, the first pylon at Luxor Temple at around twilight. It's an incredible temple, well worth seeing. Beautiful, beautiful temple, and it's open late at night. There's a lot of interesting stuff in there. Here we have some of the mud brick silos from the Ramesseum. Now, these are the mud bricks that are very, very similar to what the Israelites would have made, and around the same time. And these storage magazines would have been used to store offerings, food and food offerings that would have been offered to the deified king once he had died, Ramses II. So it's a fascinating that there's so many of these still around. Now, this is a view from the top of Dendara Temple. You go up onto the roof, and which is a special ticket, and you can look down onto the rest of the temple complex. And what we have here is what's called the Mamisi. It's kind of a birth chapel of Ptolemy II, where the king is sort of rebirthed as a god. It's to portray that mythology. But right beside it, we have a Christian basilica.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
And that's happened to most of these temples, is after Christianity became the dominant religion in Egypt, a lot of these Egyptian temples were repurposed as churches.
Wow.
This is just a sunset, beautiful sunset on the Nile.
Wow. That's beautiful.
This is the step pyramid of Zoser at Saqqara.
Wow.
And I'd say about a couple hundred meters away is this pyramid, the Pyramid of Unis, which looks completely disheveled and falling apart. But it's really, really important for one reason, which is what's on the inside. This is what's on the inside, which is the
pyramid text.
The pyramid text, and these are the oldest pyramid texts in Egypt.
Wow. Yeah, our good friend Shaka was talking about this, and we'll get to that in a minute.
I thought that would be a good segue.
Yes, it was beautiful, beautiful segue.
So that's the slideshow.
Okay, no, that's a great segue. So, yeah, because what we want to discuss today is primarily, well, as you've come to know, the conscious community makes quite a bit critique on the Bible, and one of the biggest critiques is that the Bible is a ripoff of ancient Egyptian religion / literature, and the book they quote the most from of this claim of plagiarism is what we now call the Book of the Dead. So, with that being said, we need to start with, well, what actually is the Book of the Dead? Because that's not the proper title.
I think there's another way we should start this.
Okay.
Which is, what is a ripoff?
This is true. Plagiarism.
Okay.
Right.
Plagiarism is not the same as citing.
Okay? This is true.
If we're going to talk about, well, is the Bible a ripoff of the Book of the Dead? We have to define what is a ripoff.
Right.
Now, are they saying that this is a whole-scale copy? Carte blanche? Are they saying it's taking one or two pieces? I mean, what is the claim they're actually making here? Because that is going to very much color this discussion.
Well, they will tell you the basic definition of plagiarism is the practice of taking someone else's work or ideas and passing them off as one's own. That's exactly the accusation they're making.
And the fact is that we're dealing here with a book of literature. Okay, it's not just a religious book. It is a religious book, but it's also a work of literature.
Right.
And one of the key components of literature is what's called intertextuality. You can't have literature without intertextuality, which means it references things outside of itself.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, let's say I was to write a 100,000-word dissertation. Not that I've ever done that before. But let's say I was to write a 100,000-word dissertation, and I never cite a single source. I just do it out of my head.
Yeah, you failed that class.
Exactly.
Automatic.
Exactly. You fail that class automatically because you didn't cite anything. You didn't reference anything outside of your thoughts, outside of your own worldview. You know, there's a saying in academia. You know, you steal from one source, that's plagiarism. You steal from 500 sources, that's masterful research. Okay? Because what you're doing is you're not really stealing from 500 sources. You're citing outside of 500 sources. You're bringing the world into your text. So we have to be very, very careful when we talk about what is plagiarism here.
Mm-hmm.
Because the fact is that there's also an anachronistic component here. Because the whole idea of taking something outside, citing it, comes with also more modern, or at least early modern innovations of publication. So until we started having the printing press, we really couldn't cite a source for a variety of reasons, because there wasn't any standard edition that you could say, oh, I got it from here. Even stuff such as book titles came with the printed book, the codex. So without that sort of real object of a book in a standard edition that you had many, many, many copies of, and you weren't just hand copying it, you couldn't cite your sources. Now, despite that, the Bible does mention sources it cites.
Mm-hmm.
And it mentions that it doesn't come from, say, a biblical writer, which is really phenomenal for its time. Like, for example, Proverbs 31:1 says, these are the sayings of King Lemuel. It's taking a source outside of itself and bringing it into the text.
Or the Book of Jubilees, the Book of Enoch,
Mm-hmm.
the Book of
Yep.
the Annuals of the Wars. Right.
Epimenides. Paul cites Epimenides. He says, your own philosopher says this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's Epimenides. So because the Bible is the Bible's very forthcoming that it does cite other sources. But at the same time, too, it also follows the convention of, say, the scribal traditions of its time. Now, the fact is, if we could say, hey, okay, the Bible takes just the Book of the Dead, doesn't cite anything else, cites one source, nothing else, it's just the Book of the Dead in a different wrapping.
But remember the critique. The critique isn't that we cite. We still wholesale from ancient Egypt and claim that it's ours.
That's the point I was making. If you could just say that the Bible was just the Book of the Dead in a new wrapping, it's just citing one source, well, there might be some merit to that claim.
Right.
So that's what I mean when I said, well, we have to define what a ripoff is.
Right. And
but if the
was
Bible
there such a
cites
thing?
any sources,
Was there such a thing as plagiarism in the ancient Near East? Was that even a concept?
it wasn't a concept, no.
Okay.
No. It really wasn't a concept until roughly the 10th century AD. It wasn't, I mean, the Greeks sort of had the view of, I say it, it's mine. You know, that sort of idea of plagiarism is anachronistic.
Mm.
I mean, again, a lot of it comes from, say, the printing press, the protecting certain editions of monastic texts, that sort of thing.
Lost audio, David. You mute. Can't hear you. Can't hear you. Can't hear you. Cannot hear you, sir. What's going on, Dean U? We got Shotty Mills. We got the Savvy Budgeteer in the check-in. We got Dana. The bodega ladies are in the house. Having a little technical difficulties. Seems like the ancient pantheon of Kemet is not happy with our conversation, and they're wreaking havoc with David's headphones. Can you still hear me, Dave? Okay. You might have to come out and come back in. You can do that real quick. So it's always, never a dull moment. Never a dull moment. So this is definitely interesting. Yeah, we definitely need to go to Egypt, guys. That'd be a very interesting group trip. I was talking to David behind the scenes. It's like, if I do the Israel trip, I'm not doing the super churchy, religious, here's the church with the supplicant. Like, I could care less about that. Like, I need to go to the primary joints. You know what I mean? Like, I need to go to the archaeological digs. Like, don't give me the superficial TBN. I don't want that. Like, I want to take the boat ride across the Sea of Galilee. I want to touch the Wailing Wall. I want to go to Caesarea Philippi, where the actual quote unquote gates of hell is. You know what I mean? So, like those things, the Church of Supplica, you can have that. That's crazy. I think like there's 3 different churches that actually uses that compound, and they be beefing with each other to see who gets what when. It's crazy. Hard to see.
Okay.
Yes, Dave.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it looks like my sound driver just conked out.
Oh. The pantheon of Egyptian gods is upset with you, Dave. Don't like what you're doing.
Something like that.
All right, so with that, we figured out that
okay, where do we leave off? Because
we talked about defining a ripoff, what plagiarism is, and you basically destroyed that whole idea of it being a plagiarized issue. So now, if you can really break down, because if you're going to claim that we're copying from something, we need to know what exactly we're copying from, right?
Yeah.
So the Book of the Dead. First of all, what's the actual term? And then from there, we can just break down what the origin and the evolution of that particular literature.
Okay, the Book of the Dead is actually is sort of the end of a series of textual traditions. Okay, it starts with the pyramid texts, which then are copied and modified to produce the coffin texts. The coffin texts are then codified onto a papyrus, and that is your Book of the Dead.
Mm.
So it is a collection of spells. And it's a collection of spells for the to protect and to ensure the security of the dead in the afterlife.
Now, why would the dead need security? What's going on in that world that they need security from?
Well, it comes down to the Egyptian worldview. The Egyptian worldview is a phenomenological worldview where you have demons and gods and all sorts of scary things in the night that want to take a piece out of you, essentially. So the Egyptian worldview sees itself as 1 foot in this world, 1 foot in the other world. So they're constantly seeing themselves surrounded by demons, and when they die, now they've introduced vulnerability. There's vulnerability in regards to protection from those demons, taking chunks out of their body as they, prepare for apotheosis. There's uncertainty whether or not they're going to pass the weighing of the heart.
Can you unpack?
Becoming a god. Becoming like a god.
Okay.
They don't really become a god, but they become god-like. Their flesh and bone turn to gold and iron, imperishable metals. Okay, so there's all this sort of mechanics that are happening in the afterlife that the spells that they chant is to protect them from. Like, for example, the weighing of the heart scene, where they're chanting the negative confession.
Right.
The negative confession isn't a declaration that they haven't done those acts, like lying, cheating, putting your thumb on the scales, etc. What it is, it's to absolve them of those acts that they did in this lifetime so that they could pass the scale.
See, I've always heard the opposite. That's interesting.
Well, it's a vicarious. These spells are vicarious. They're all vicarious, which means that it would be like you see their names coupled with Osiris.
Right.
Like, for example, Teddy Osiris, Alfredo Osiris. And it's that coupling with Osiris that creates that vicarious connection that through the spell, they're gaining the power of Osiris to affect the spell in the afterlife.
So it's anthropaic magic in a sense that I want to go through the same thing that Osiris went through because he died and he came back. So I'm trying to mimic that. Is that close?
There's a little bit of that. But there's other factors involved. But the power of Osiris's resurrection was that it was sort of beneficial to all people. Now, when we talk about resurrection, we have to be very, very careful here because the Egyptian concept of resurrection is not the same as the Christian idea of resurrection. They're two almost completely different concepts that unfortunately share the same term. So
give us the compare and contrast between the Egyptian view and the biblical worldview of resurrection.
Okay. The biblical worldview is about the resurrection of the body. We find this in the New Testament. We find this in all the Christian creeds. When it talks about resurrection, it's talking about the resurrection of the body. The soul is presumed to be immortal in the Christian worldview. In the Egyptian worldview, it's very different. It's not talking about a resurrection of the body. It's talking about a nightly return of the soul, which is perishable, to be fed, to be cared for, to receive drink offerings, and then go back to the underworld. Okay, so it's more or less a cyclical return of the spirit, more than it is, say, a resurrection of the body. And in fact, it's not a resurrection of the body at all.
Sounds to be tedious. Sounds to be tedious. They keep coming back. You got to feed the spirit. Yeah, that sounds a lot
like cyclical eternity. It's kind of a cyclical eternity.
Wow. Yeah, that'll sound.
You come to the body during the night and return to the dead during the day. It's
right. So I know there's different versions of. Well, first of all, what is the appropriate name for this piece of literature? We call it the Book of the Dead, but how do you say it exactly? I know it's something put up Emheru, something.
Yeah, it's the Peru Emheru.
It's Peru
coming forth by day.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so why is it called that?
Because that is one of the first verses.
Okay.
He who comes forth by day. It's an infinitive, and in Egyptian language, a lot of texts start with an infinitive.
Okay. Now,
So and frankly, a lot of ancient texts don't have a separate title. A lot of ancient texts are just simply identified by their first line.
right. There's books in the Bible are like that as well, right? So,
Yeah.
Latin Exodus, right? It's what is it? Here are the generations. Yeah. So that's like the first line, right? Okay. I mean, that makes sense. So
there's no separate title for it. It was just these were just a collection of spells.
right. Now, on average, and I know that there's variations between these particular Book of the Dead, but on average, how many spells would you find in a particular Book of the Dead?
Oh, that's completely all across the map. It depends upon how much money they had.
So you paid by the spell?
You paid by papyrus. You paid by the length of papyrus. There was actually a whole industry of papyrus making for the Book of the Dead. We find thousands of these. And what we find is that while the spells are sort of all similar, that there's differences in lengths of papyrus, how many spells they contained, what sort of illustrations, the quality of the illustrations. You could find really top tier Books of the Dead like Papyrus Annie, but you could also find some real budget budget versions.
Walmart versions of
the Walmart version of the Book of the Dead. Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. So, all right. So, give us some major points of reference within the Book of the Dead. Now, I know Anubis, right, plays a major part. He kind of is your, like, I guess
it's not organized by theme. It
really?
doesn't have a comprehensive storyline. It's because it's not a story. It's a spell collection.
All right, so depending on the situation, you pull out that particular spell.
It's more akin to a spell book from Hogwarts.
Wow.
Than it is a book that you read.
Right. So if I get into a particular situation, I pull out spell 120, and then I'm good. Is that how it works?
Well, these would be supposedly, some of these would be read at your funeral.
Okay,
you would be dead. Your next of kin would read some of these. The lector priest would need some of these, and then the rest of it would just be stored in your tomb with you if you need it on the next life. So it's not a storybook. It doesn't have a plot. It doesn't have a mythology. It's just, apart from the mythology that went behind the spells, they're just spells. They are intended, like, for example, there's one coffin text whose only function is to provide surety that the dead would be fed in the afterlife. That's all it does. It has no other reason for existing other than that.
Wow. Now, how much, like, I'm in a suit, right? I'm getting ready to transition. I got to make sure I got my spells. How much would it cost me to have a beautifully written book of spells?
Oh, it'd be very expensive. Yeah, be very expensive. It could cost you, say, I don't know. It'd be a lot of money. Lot of money.
So only like the elite of Egypt would be privy to this kind of information.
Oh yeah. Only the elite had these scrolls. You don't find them in commoners' tombs.
So only the 1% of Egypt knew how to make it past the underworld.
You typically find them in, say, viziers' tombs, high scribes, governors, that sort of thing.
So your blue collar worker, if you will, in Egypt just didn't have a shot, basically.
No, the blue collar worker would not have been able to afford one of these.
Which is interesting, right? Because the gospel,
even the Walmart version,
right? Which is funny, right? Because now when you look at the gospel, I mean, it's for everyone, right?
Yeah.
So all right. So let's be charitable. Let's do what's called the still man argument.
It's no fun.
No, just a little.
Just a little. Okay.
let's still man that argument, right? Let's be charitable.
Mm-hmm.
If you had to show a direct parallel between these spells from Hogwarts and the Bible, what points of connection can you make?
None.
That's not even close.
I can't think of a single thing in the Book of the Dead that's even remotely close to the Bible. Being charitable. I mean, I can think of other texts that, the Bible probably did use or cite in its writing, but the Book of the Dead is not one of them. I mean, we do find, say, the instruction of Amenemope,
right,
in say Proverbs 22.
Right.
We find the hymn of the Aten in Psalm 104. We don't find the Book of the Dead anywhere. I mean, we don't, because frankly, we don't find a single magic spell in the entire Bible. We find magic in the Bible, Let
me push back.
In the Bible, but we don't see a single magic spell.
Let me play Kemet advocate here.
All right, play Kemet advocate.
Our good friend Shaka Atmos has a book where he makes this claim, and that he shows within his book direct one-to-one correlations between texts in scripture and the pyramid texts. And one of the things that he says, and we spoke about this earlier, was being born again, and that he found a spell in the pyramid text that says to be born again. So there you go, right?
Oh, I'm convinced.
So what do you say if someone brings that up? It's like, hey, the spell says born again. Christians talk about born again. So there you go, one-to-one correlation.
I presume you're talking about his comparison of utterance spell 412 from the Book of the Dead.
Yes.
Okay, where it says supposedly born again.
Right.
Well, I'm going to pull a Michael Heiser on you, which is I'm going to go back to the original sources.
Nice.
So what happens is, say Shaka Mosa, he's going to a translation by Samuel Mercer. And Samuel Mercer's translation is just not very good, quite frankly. It's just not very good. It was very shortly superseded by Raymond Faulkner's, which is much, much better.
Right.
But even so, we can go. Jim Allen published critical editions of the book, of the pyramid texts. So we can go and look at all the editions of the pyramid texts that are from the pyramids, and we can actually see what does the text actually say in its original language. And the pyramid text 412 basically says that you are born in your months as the moon. There's no born again. Again is not in the texts. It is you are born in your months as the moon. That's what it says in the original languages. In the original language.
So where do we get this idea that it says born again? I mean, it must be in some. So Mercer.
That's how Mercer translates it.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Or mistranslates it. Mercer was much more of a Semiticist than he really was a Egyptologist. So he brings in a lot of, say, sort of biblicalese when he does his translations. So it's not a good translation. It's not a true translation.
Wow. So
it's just not there. It's just not there.
So there's no one-to-one correlation at all with the pyramid text?
Not in spell 412.
Wow.
It's just not there. But this is the danger, though, of just depending upon translations too. We sort of find this in even in Christianity, where pastors who don't know the original languages will just shop around between translations until they find the translation they like. Okay,
that's true.
It's the same problem. what Shaka Amosa has done is he shopped between translations of, say, the pyramid texts until he found one he liked.
But to his credit, he actually does concede to the fact that most Egyptologists don't refer to that particular translation, which makes you wonder, if he knows that, why would you use that, knowing that eventually somebody who knows the actual, language is going to critique it? Or maybe he was just hoping that wasn't the case. I don't know.
Well, his justification for still using the Mercer text is a little odd too, which is he cites was it Bruce Hare, the guy who started the Archive of Sacred Texts.
Yes.
Well, he's not a scholar,
like at all.
At all. He was a computer engineer. He was an occultist. But he wasn't actually a authority on ancient Egyptian.
Wow.
I mean, it's a little bit like a guy who collects war medals and then is lauded as a war hero.
So he's a cosplayer when it comes to Egyptology.
Well, he's a passionate occult. He was a passionate occultist. He sort of had the view that all texts were all true. So, he was one of those eclectic occultists.
Okay.
But that's not the same as having an educated opinion as to what is a good translation versus what is a poor translation.
All right, so how about this? Are there any particular spells that, if we was to hear, we would find kind of sketchy or strange? Is anything that? Well, one of the more stranger ones, spells.
Okay.
Could you?
There's several things that are culturally very, very odd in the Book of the Dead. Like for example, Horus destroying his enemies behind the altar. And there's things that, unless you are sort of clued into the ritual aspects of the mythology, might seem very odd to a modern reader. Like for example, there's a text that recurs that talks about a good decomposition.
Okay.
That's very strange to the modern ear, because we don't think of decay as being good in any sense of the term.
Right.
We see a moldy piece of bread on our cupboard and we think, well, yeah, throw that out. We don't have that concept that decay can be good. But they had what they did was they were able to mythologize it and sanctify it in a way. But there's a whole lot of religious baggage underneath that a modern reader just wouldn't understand.
Right. Has there ever been a time written where someone used a spell and it didn't work? Is there any literature that ever,
We have no records of a spell not working, but no records of a spell working either.
Right. Figure I just throw that out there. So
we do have other reports in ancient Egypt of magic working, like for example in Papyrus Westcar, where an unfaithful spouse is eaten by a crocodile.
By the high priest of a wax crocodile, right?
Yes,
he throws it in the water. Right.
Crocodile walks backwards to the river, throws it over his shoulder.
Right. Then he goes, gets the pharaoh and shows him, and he spits the woman back out, and the guy who's
the crocodile comes out, eats the lover, the commoner lover,
right,
which convicts the wife. The wife's executed. But
right. Yeah, I read that. That's hilarious. All right, so the Book of the Dead is basically a collection of spells. So that it, for the Nesut or for the elite, somewhere along the line they transform, at least temporarily,
Nesut, by the way, is the
into
king. Nesut,
the
by the
king.
way, is the king.
Right. And Nesut Bidi, right? That's how you say it? Nesut Bidi?
Nesut, yeah.
All right. And so there's a point where he'll become one with Osiris.
Yes.
In order for him to make that transition, right? Then you get to the scales with Ma'at, right? With the feather and the scarab. And then if his heart is as light as the feather, he makes it. Right. Yeah. But
well, his voyage is just beginning at that point.
There's more to that.
Oh, there's more.
I thought that was the end game right there. There's more.
No, that's not the end game. That's the beginning.
Pray tell me. Well, I thought that was it.
He's got to transverse the 12 sections of the Duat.
Wow. Is that the 12 gates? The Book of 12 Gates? Oh, okay. So that's just the first level of the game.
Oh, yeah. That's just the beginning. No. His trials aren't over yet.
You see, I always thought that. Wow. I did not know that. So once he passed these 12 gates, then he makes it. Once
he passes through all the 12 sections, or the 11 sections of the Duat, where he has to play tag with demons that want to eat him, then he makes it to the fields of Osiris.
So he has
where he spends the rest of his days of all eternity in glorious, backbreaking labor.
The king.
Anyone.
Okay, wait a minute, David. The king, who's never done any actual labor.
Well, the king's special. Oh, okay. He gets to ride on the boat of Re.
Okay.
He doesn't go to the fields of Osiris.
So, but his servants who went with him, they get to go to the fields.
They go to the fields.
So you was a worker in real life, and then you're a worker in the afterlife.
Yes.
So your status does not change.
Your status does not change. Your status does not improve in the afterlife.
Oh my gosh, are you kidding me?
No, that's the Egyptian afterlife. Your status is exactly as high as it was at your highest point in this life.
And you don't move up at all.
You don't move up in the slightest in the Egyptian afterlife.
Yo, I did not know that. That's crazy.
So if you were a laborer in the field, you will be a laborer in the field through all eternity.
So you jump through all these hoops.
The whole purpose of the Shabti statues,
right?
Okay, you know those little statues they bury you with, right? The Shabtis,
right?
Okay, a Shabti relieves you.
Represents one servant, right?
It's one servant for 1 day of the year. So one Shabti is good for 1 day.
Wow.
So if you were wealthy, what would happen is you would be buried with 365 Shabtis plus extra Shabtis to be supervisors for those Shabtis. So
Shabti supervisors for the Shabtis.
Yep. Shabti supervisors for the Shabtis.
Wow.
So if you were wealthy, you were buried with around 400 Shabtis to take care of the entire year's labor. Okay.
Now the Shabti was to replace the retainer sacrifices, right? Was that a replacement for the retainer sacrifice?
To some extent, yes, okay. It was. But retainer sacrifices ended pretty early. Okay?
Right. That's pre-dynasty.
No, that's Dynasty 2.
Really? Okay.
Dynasty 2. The last retainer sacrifices that we find is in the burial of Qasim Kemwe, the last king of Dynasty 2.
So you're just an average bricklayer who lives by the side of the Nile. You work hard your whole life. Somehow you manage to get through these spells somehow, and you jump through all these hoops. And when you make it, you get to be a bricklayer. And listen,
for eternity.
I did. That's no. How you compare the two? Like, how do you?
It sucks.
We sucks. Sit on the throne with Jesus. We get crowns. We co-rulers with God. Like,
we praise God through all eternity. Yeah.
But why would I want to give that up for the? Oh my gosh! I did not know it. crazy. Dude,
Yeah,
why would you
that's
do
the
that?
Egyptian afterlife. Is
Ugh.
I mean, this is why the nobles in their tombs went the extra mile to put all their titles in the tomb. So it's a permanent record that you had this rank, because the rank in this life determines your rank in the next life.
Wow. Whew. That like. So again, right? This makes this claim of plagiarism that much more like. What are you talking about? It's non-existent, like at all.
It has no. Well, I mean, a lot of the claims I think of the conscious community are, as again, revisionist religion.
Right.
It's a revival religion. So they're sort of overlooking, say, the less glamorous aspects of, say, the ancient Egyptian religion.
Right.
Like working in the fields as a manual laborer for the rest of your natural life. Or natural eternity. Yeah.
It's the romanticism of ancient Egypt. That's what
it's the romanticism, yeah.
Right. Wow. That's amazing. Well, with that being said, before we wrap it up, does anyone in the chat have any questions for David before he goes back to his pyramids? And while we're waiting for some questions, David, what can we be expecting from you in the immediate future?
In the immediate future, well, I just got back from Egypt.
When did you get back? This week?
I got back last week, and I'm right now under a mandatory 14-day quarantine.
Right.
So, okay. But here's what we do have in, say, the more distant future is that I'm going to be conducting the next Tutku tour in Egypt in October. So I'll be hosting that one. So I'm going to be the expert on the ground. Oh,
okay. Question: can you not wrap it up and keep on going? No, we can't do that. We got to keep you hungry for more. That's how it works. Dinu. So you're going to be leading that, and when's that?
That's in October this year.
Man, I would love to go to that. Mm-hmm. The people in the chat was talking about, we got to make this pilgrimage to Egypt and Israel. So that'd be great.
Well, I'm only doing Egypt. There's another guy who's doing Israel. So,
all right, here's a question from Adrian: is the ancestral plane a real thing? I guess according to ancient Egypt, I'm assuming. Do they really believe in the ancestral plane? Do they believe in an ancestral plane?
What do you mean by ancestral plane?
I'm thinking he's talking about like Black Panther. You saw the movie Black Panther, right?
No, I didn't.
You never saw the movie, and you're supposed to be a Marvel guy.
I don't watch many movies.
You're
I thought we'd been over this.
Anyway,
hey, I just watched the Cecil DeMille's Exodus. Okay.
So you did see it?
I did finally see it.
Good. So, like is there a realm in ancient Egypt where you get to, associate with your ancestors in the spiritual realm? Is there such a thing in Egypt?
It's not. If there is, it's not really something that's emphasized.
Okay.
Ancestor worship wasn't a huge deal in Egypt. It did happen. It was more, say, private worship inside of people's homes. But we don't have any, say, theology of ancestral worship.
That's more Mesopotamian, right? Like ancient Canaanite religion, that you'll find more of that?
You do find it more in, say, Canaanite religions. You do find it in other religions. You find it more, in Southeast Asia. It's very common in, say, Southeast Asia. It's not so common in Egypt.
Okay. Are you working on any books?
Yes, I am, and I can't divulge too much of it at the moment.
Because you would have to kill me, right? Maybe it's one of those secrets.
I'd have to send Anubis after you.
We can't have that because I don't got the spell book, so I'll be in trouble. I don't have the cloak of levitation or the eye book. You know what I mean? I don't have any.
But you do have your Hogwarts spell book, right?
It's in the bag somewhere. It's in the bag with the wands.
You're probably okay. You're probably safe.
Actually, the magic wands. What kingdom did that first appear?
Well, we find Well, here's the thing. Wands are one of those things that are, because what we call magic wands, say in the Egyptian context, are not so much magic wands. Okay.
What are they then? What are they?
One of the things that are often called magic wands are what's called birthing clappers. They're basically two curved items that were used to sort of ward off demons in the birth process. But we don't find anything like magic wands like we say find in Western tales of magic and wizards and that sort of thing. No, those sort of things don't exist in Egypt.
Okay.
We do
call that in the museums. They'll call it magic wands. They call them magic wands. So
I know they call them magic wands, but they call all sorts of crazy things in museums that are just whacked. I keep seeing when I go to some of these museums, I keep seeing bark figureheads, labeled aegis, which is a Greek term of a pectoral amulet, and it's like no, that's wrong. That's totally wrong.
Right.
But because a lot of museums are run by classicists. They're run by classicists. And the classics, the Greek and Roman classics have their own sort of terminology and definitions. And so they take these Egyptian antiquities and stuff them into these Hellenistic terms. And it's like, oh my gosh.
Here we have a question from Watchdog. I think we kind of touched this earlier. It says, were Egyptians who carried all the dead supplies into the chambers of the tombs killed? Saw that in movies and never believed it.
Good.
So that did not happen.
That did not happen. No. It did happen in, say, Mesopotamia, where people who brought, say, the funerary goods of Mesopotamian kings, like of the burials at Ur, they were killed after. Okay, but we don't find that in Egypt. That doesn't happen in Egypt. In fact, as I said, the last time we see retainers being killed is at the end of Dynasty 2. That's the last time we see it. Right.
Because that was bad business for the next pharaoh in line, because now he doesn't have a workforce, because the previous Nasut would have killed all of them, right? So
well, who are the people doing the burying? It's the administrators. It's the bureaucracy.
And we can't have them doing any kind of
the bureaucracies always protect themselves. Bureaucracies haven't changed in thousands of years. They're always protecting themselves.
Right. Wow.
So, the king's dead. Are we going to kill ourselves now? I don't think so.
Look, King, we got these cute little figurines that you can use instead.
How convenient.
Right. Oh man, that's crazy. So where can people find you on YouTube? Because I don't know if people know that you actually have your own YouTube channel. So
I do have my own YouTube channel. The channel is called Ancient Egypt and the Bible. We have just done we've just crossed our 50th video just recently.
Nice.
And we just hit 150 users or subscribers. So nice. It's growing slowly and surely, and we engage all these topics on ancient Egypt and how it cross sections with the Bible.
Right. And yeah, he definitely it's really short 20-minute lessons, really good stuff, guys. So please go and subscribe to David's channel. It really helps us when it comes to our witness, defending the gospel, especially with people in the conscious community, so I mean, look at the stuff that we just discovered today. I mean, it just makes the claim of plagiarism that much more ridiculous, to be honest with you, right? So
there are portions, we do have to recognize that there are portions of the Bible that are taken from other literary sources. There's no question about it.
Right.
But it's not a ripoff.
Right. It's not
intertextuality.
We're not stealing.
Literature.
Right.
Yeah, it's not stealing en masse.
Right.
It's not a straight ripoff copy. And it's certainly not a straight ripoff copy of the Book of the Dead. It's not even close.
All right. Carly just subscribed.
Oh, thank you.
Warrior Woman just subscribed. Yeah, man. Wow, bro, you're good stuff, man. You got good stuff. Of course, we're going to, You know, of course we're gonna have that. So before we wrap it up, is there any last words you'd like to say before we're out of here, Dave?
It's been a real pleasure talking to you again. What's number 4 now?
Is it 4? I think it's 5.
4? Is it 5? No,
it might be 5. It's not 5?
I don't think it's 5. I think this is the 4th.
This is 4?
Last time you said I was your first 3-timer.
Right, so it's 4. Right, so this is all right.
This has got to be a 4.
And of course there'll be more if you will, you know, grace us with your
I
presence.
love doing these things. I love interacting with the community here. It's a blessing to me, and I really enjoy it.
And likewise, we enjoy you, David. So with that being said, David Falk, BK Apologists, signing off. Catch you later. Peace.